This is the popular view of the Child Support Agency. Honest men ruined by savage assessments. But our report tonight has a different focus. A secret mole inside the CSA helps us expose the faults in the system, which allow fathers to benefit at the expense of the mothers and the children the agency is supposed to help.
My case proves beyond all reasonable doubt the Child Support Agency does not work.
People who are self-employed, who want to rip off their former wives, can get away with murder under the Child Support Act as it's now framed.
About a quarter of the complaints I get as Parliamentary Ombudsman are about the CSA.
I've been shot at. I've been hit. It took the CSA to finally break me.
It's produced all this...
Terry West's battle with the Child Support Agency has lasted 3 years. It's produced mountains of paper and little else. Her story is typical of the 6 we examined tonight. Her former husband is self-employed, and through the skills of his accountants, can show the CSA he earns considerably less than his lifestyle would suggest. A man working inside this building, the West Midlands offices of the Child Support Agency here in Dudley, has for some time been sending us information on the agency's seeming inability to deal with delicate and difficult cases. We don't know who he is. He's only known as Rupert. But the information and the documentation he's passed to us has been checked and verified by other sources. It's a damning indictment of the system. Tonight, Rupert is represented by an actor.
I'm enclosing copies of the official statistics for you to use as you see fit. They're restricted for access by senior management only. 50% of maintenance assessments are incorrect, and the Dudley Centre alone lost 2,845 phone inquiries from the public. As of last week, more than 1,000 were outstanding. The outstanding post figures do not include countless thousands of pieces of post dumped in the storage room in box folders to avoid having to count them, as they cannot be linked with people's cases where they have gone missing. Best of luck, Rupert.
This program picks up some of the cases where the CSA, though good in theory, have got it wrong in practice. Terry West has 2 teenage children by rock record producer Chris Sangarides. After their divorce 12 years ago, he's continued to pay £300 a month. Then the CSA stepped in. They reassessed his earnings and reduced the demand to £57 a week, then £30 a week, and finally, nothing. To make the assessment, the CSA relied on figures Sangarides supplied. They don't seem to square with the life he actually leads. He lives in a £300,000 house in the smart commuter town of Gerrards Cross. Terry West has dragged him in front of the CSA to answer questions about his income on many occasions. This summer, he ended up before a tribunal.
The Child Support Agency have now been ordered to go away and completely look at my case in a brand new light and look at all the documents that we really insisted that they looked at in the beginning 2.5 years ago.
Her case was even debated in the House of Commons.
What alarms me is the way in which they've examined the particular status and income potential and actual wealth of the ex-husband and whether that particular adjudication is right and fair in this case.
The Child Support Agency do not have the powers to scrutinise the self-employed's accounts in a manner that needs to be done. He obviously lives in a large house. His children from his second marriage are in private education. Bringing up 2 children without any help from him whatsoever has obviously put a demand on me, because I've not only had to be mother, I've had to be father as well.
Like all the absent fathers in this program, Mr. Sangarides was asked for a formal interview. Like all the absent fathers in this program, he ran rather than face the music. Anne Johnson was married for 18 years to Stephen Cameron, a public relations expert who specialises in pharmaceuticals. Under a CSA settlement, she gets just £16 a week from him to help raise their 9-year-old daughter, Lucy. Lucy was a guest last week at the blessing of her father's new marriage in London. Lucy's mother believes he's hoodwinked the CSA.
He's creative director for a firm, which is his own company, of pharmaceutical advertisers. When he left his previous job, he was earning £40,000 a year. He then took this job with his own company, earning £16,000 a year. Do you believe that?
Anne Johnson feels that the CSA should have the powers of a court of law and be able to cross-examine people about the evidence they provide.
They have said to me, oh, is your husband a company director of his own company? And I've said yes, and they say, oh, we know about this, we know it goes on, but there's nothing we can do. Our hands are tied.
We asked to meet Mr. Cameron, but he went on honeymoon and then abroad on business. Sally Allison was married for 7 years to flamboyant soccer manager Malcolm Allison before he left. They have a 16-year-old daughter, Alexis. After a 12-year battle, Sally obtained a court order that Allison should pay her £400 a month for Alexis. Then came the CSA.
I have had form after form after form. We go through, we go through, we go through. Same question, time and time again. The same information, the same form. But they have this information. It's a waste of the taxpayers' money. It's a waste of everybody's money. They do nothing. Malcolm managed to pay, out of the last 12 years, 6 months' maintenance. I have fought and fought and fought.
Alexis was a promising tennis player until a knee injury halted a career already made difficult by her father's reluctance to find the necessary money.
They believed I had potential. I was getting help from the Surrey Lawn Tennis Club, but I needed extra help from my dad to pay for extra coaching and etc. It's not the kind of thing you're meant to ask for. You're just expected to be given it.
What the CSA should be doing is looking into his testimonial. I've just had a letter back stating that out of £30,000 that were made from his testimonial, I will only actually receive £2,200. It's important to me at the moment because I have an illness that I have to deal with. I have breast cancer. I'm not going to be too well, I shouldn't think, for the next few weeks, maybe months. I'm not sure yet. I don't want to keep being bothered. I don't want to keep being bothered by their packs.
Allison now has a new family. Sally won't finalise the divorce till he pays up. We repeatedly invited him to talk about Sally's plight, but he went to ground instead. Peter and Samara Summerfield had a 2-year relationship. He's a director of an old established quarrying company. They have a 9-year-old daughter, Crystal. Samara says she's been traumatised by her experiences with the CSA. Crystal's father admitted to earning £50,000 a year. Originally, Crystal was to receive £30 a week, later upped to £75 a week by her father. Then the CSA promised substantially more. Once again, they got it wrong.
Now, because of the CSA and a lot of heartache and pain in between, we're on £58 a week, and that's under negotiation again. Peter himself has got a very nice lifestyle. He's living in a £200,000 house. He's got a top-of-the-range BMW. He's got a yacht in Anglesey. He travels abroad around the world as part of his relaxation, which is a very different lifestyle to what myself and my little girl has.
Summerfield's yacht is in Conwy in North Wales, and that was where one of our undercover team caught up with him.
Because of having to keep it here, it does cost quite a bit of money.
More than £100 a month, in fact. And Summerfield's yacht and house are for sale.
As I say, I don't need a big 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, you know. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
We asked to talk to Mr. Summerfield on his return from one of his frequent holidays, but he wouldn't face us.
I feel that if we'd have gone back to court, I could have asked any questions of his lifestyle as he could have asked about mine. In other countries, in America and Australia, I've been told that that doesn't come under the cover, and everything about the other party is brought out on the table.
It's certainly on the table in America, where absent non-paying fathers face swift, public and humiliating punishment.
Do you have any cash with you today? None whatsoever? None. Well,
got a pack of cigarettes in your pocket?
yes, sir.
That's about $50 or $40 to $50 a month you spend on cigarettes. So you certainly could spend at least that much on your children.
The choice is simple.
Well, you don't pay your child support, you go to jail.
We have not only been supporters of mediation...
Nigel Shepherd, a family law practitioner, doesn't think jailing fathers who won't pay up is the answer, but then he doesn't think the CSA has the solution either.
Well, the Child Support Act works on a formula basis. Anything that works on an inflexible formula means that people can find a way of getting around it. So people who are self-employed, who want to rip off their former wives, can get away with murder under the Child Support Act as it's now framed.
And there are accountants prepared to help you do just that. Alex Sklan, who's in private practice in Golders Green, has first-hand experience of the CSA. He's even been prosecuted by them. And he was only too happy to advise one of our undercover reporters.
The answer is we have had experience with the CSA, and you want to try and form a limited company, get all the profits into the limited company, put all the rents in the limited company, have the same outgoings in the limited company, and then draw director's remuneration at a certain level, which will give you a minimal CSA contribution. The CSA does have draconian powers. If they feel that you're obstructing the CSA, they can actually, it's a criminal offence, and they can, well, they'll probably fine you quite substantially.
And he should know. Only last Tuesday, High Barnet magistrates fined him £750 for failing to supply the CSA with information about his earnings. Liliana Martorell, the mother of Sklan's daughter Alexandra, received a £35,000 settlement to provide for the child, just £40 a week until she can leave school. Miss Martorell didn't think it was enough, and neither did the CSA.
How much have they all together? How much is it?
The CSA demanded £120 a week, but Sklan continues to appeal on the grounds that his original settlement was full and final.
Very good. He has deliberately obstructed entry to the inspector who actually visited his business premises to sign his documents to prove his earnings and his expenses.
But in this case, it's actually cheaper for him to get a court record and pay a fine than pay you what he owes you.
On one occasion, the bailiff visited Mr. Sklan's office premises to seize goods for the value of the liability order granted in my favour or in favour of the Child Support Agency on the 1st of June 1994. Mr. Sklan, I was told by CSA official, was acting in a rather aggressive manner. The bailiff told him flatly the goods or the money. Mr. Sklan was driven to the bank, withdrew £6,000 in cash, paid the bailiff, and this is for a poor man who claims to have no money at all.
Mr. Sklan was reluctant to talk to us. Mr. Sklan, Roger Cook, Central Television. Would you like to tell us why you're ignoring your responsibilities to your child and deliberately misleading the CSA? We suggested to the parliamentary ombudsman that a sharp accountant could run rings round the CSA.
That is a sad reflection, if it is true, and I hope that it is something that those responsible for the CSA, that is the ministers in the Department of Social Security and the Chief Executive, will have regard to. It's also a matter that the individual members of the staff of the CSA ought to have a look at to see if they can improve the standard of service that they give to the public.
Now, we were certainly rather slow to get our act together here, but I can tell you that is changing. In the first 6 months of this financial year, we have gone to court and got liability orders against 800 self-employed people who would not comply with us. There were very few of those done in the first year of the agency and only 200 to 300 done in the whole of last year. So I believe we are getting ever more effective at dealing with those people who are self-employed, the minority, who do not comply.
So far, our investigations have exposed the fathers who cynically manipulate the system and thereby cause their children a good deal of unnecessary hardship. But Rupert, our secret mole, sent us a chilling reminder of how all too often tragedy follows the CSA's intervention. Rupert's warning followed the suicide of Philip Mitchell, who killed himself and his 4 children, Jonathan, Catherine, Jessica and Christopher, after he received a £2,800 bill from the CSA.
Following the tragic death of those 4 children and their father, I must write to you, as this carnage cannot be allowed to continue. Despite the fact that the CSA denies responsibility for the deaths, each of the 6 main CSA centres have now had to appoint a suicide liaison officer. The staff using the computers have to refer to him in code as the nominated officer, as his true role cannot be entered on the computer. All cases where absent parents threaten suicide either by phone or letter have to be referred to him. Last week, 2 further absent parents tried to commit suicide. 1 is still in hospital. The CSA is desperately trying to prevent this leaking to the press following the death of the father and the children. As usual, please do everything you can to protect my identity. Regards, Rupert.
Roger Smith, now an airport fireman on Tyneside, is a former Royal Marine. He saw active service in the Falklands and in Northern Ireland. His first wife didn't like military life, and their marriage ended in an amicable, clean break settlement. Amicable, that is, until the CSA stepped in. Their demands left him with just £42 a week to feed, clothe and house his new family. It also cost him his good relationship with his previous family, and last year it drove him to attempt suicide.
I then got my assessment, and it was just unbelievable what they were asking me for. They were asking me for over half of my wage. They were asking me for nearly £300 a month, and that's not including the arrears that had amounted, whilst they were working it out, to £1,325. Psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, health visitors, they all pleaded with the CSA to stop. It was a case that the CSA finally finished me off. They pushed me to the point where one night last year, something snapped and I attempted to commit suicide. The night on the bridge was the night I let go. That night, one policeman decided that he wasn't going to let me go. The IRA couldn't get to me. The Argentinians couldn't break me. I've been shot at. I've been hit. It took the CSA to finally break me.
Roger Smith is typical of the CSA's easy targets. He's on PAYE, everything about his income is known, and he doesn't have a smart accountant. Of course, the suspicion is that you're treasury-driven, and that's why you know you have to keep going after the easiest targets to get money out of.
Oh, right. We certainly have targets. We have a published business plan laid down by Secretary of State. The target for this year is to arrange £300 million of private money to be transferred from the parent with the liability. Most of that goes to the parent with the children.
Sheila Machin has never had a penny as she struggles to bring up 2 children on her own. Her husband, who now claims to be a mature student, has refused to accept any financial responsibility for his children. He has repeatedly threatened his ex-wife with violence.
I had a terrific job in the city. By age 35, I'd managed to buy my own property. I had a newish car, I had a very, very comfortable home, And it was at this time when I made a really stupid mistake of falling in love with my ex-husband.
After a stormy and at times violent marriage, which eventually forced her and her children to seek refuge in a battered wives' hostel, Sheila hoped the CSA would come to the rescue.
Have a nice day today, Andrew. I was hoping that the CSA would chase him and make him pay, whereas the Income Support Office had failed to do so. Now I'm a lollipop lady, yes, and very grateful to be one because it gives me £15 extra a week, which I do need.
Once she was a risk assessor in the city. Now, with her former husband having emptied the bank account, she fruitlessly chases the CSA for information. All the officials can do is offer sympathy, and little else.
It's a matter of confidentiality, and I can't give you the reason why not. But
Why it can't be delivered?
why it can't be, why the employer couldn't deliver it.
Oh, I see.
But let's just say that it looks also as if his circumstances have changed. Well, it is completely. Personally, I find it completely frustrating because it seems to be ducking and diving all over the place.
Yeah.
He was still ducking and diving with us. He phoned to arrange an interview.
Hello, my name's Mr. Machin. I am willing to do your interview with you.
But when we turned up as arranged, he wouldn't talk, just handed us a letter and ran off. At least the CSA did have some contact with Machin. Some cases just get thrown away.
Many of the staff on the telephone team have now gone sick. They're on the verge of nervous breakdowns. The delays in dealing with telephone calls are getting worse. The post I told you about in my first letter has been removed from the Child Support Centre and dumped in a storeroom at the local DSS office at Cavendish House in Dudley. Each week, the CSA have to give a figure of how much post they've been unable to link with people's claims. Dumping the post means that they do not have to count it. Rupert.
The Ombudsman has already published one critical report on the CSA. Although he's noticed some improvements, he's publishing another report in the spring.
There are still some very bad mistakes being made. About a quarter of the complaints I get as Parliamentary Ombudsman are about the CSA. And for that reason, I'm not investigating every one of them. I'm investigating them generally. I'm hoping to put out another report by the end of the current financial year.
My staff have to be interposed between two people who may be very bitter towards each other, may make allegations against each other which frankly are not always well-founded, and my staff have to do the best they can to be sensitive equally to both parties. We always try. If ever we fail, I deeply apologise.
And there's still room for improvement.
There most certainly is.
Terry West would most certainly agree, for she's found yet another twist in her story.
Today, finally, after 5 months, I found out the decision of the tribunal hearing, and basically they've upped the maintenance from nothing to just over £100 a week. The CSA have said they're not bound by the tribunal's findings, which were findings of approximately 60,000 income that their father hadn't declared.
So while Terry West is left to continue her fight, Rupert is left to contemplate his catalogue of CSA problems. Phone calls left unanswered, more than 2,800 in the Dudley Centre alone. Staff not trained to handle inquiries. Thousands of letters unanswered and dumped in another building. Specially designated suicide officers at the main centres. And suicide threats hidden from published statistics.
This isn't about parents, this is about children. Children deserve a standard of living the same as what both parents can afford. No more and no less than that. And I don't think the CSA are actually doing that.